Welcome to the Floor Academy podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Hadeen, owner of Illustrious Hardwoods in Mesa, Arizona. With me this week is Troy Pefley, and we are going to get into employee safety, how to manage it, why it's important, how you need to make it happen. But first, why is Floor Academy here? Floor Academy is here to facilitate you gaining the knowledge you need to go from owning a job, running a business, to owning an asset, something that can run without you, something that takes not as much effort. You've sourced out all the things you hate because nobody wants to wear all the hats in running a business. We got into it so we could do something we loved. And most of the time you don't like the bookkeeping or the managing of employees, or there's some aspects you don't like. So you got to farm it out. We're here to help you be able to learn how to do that, get those systems and processes in place. That all being said, for over 65 years, Laticrete has been a leading manufacturer of products and systems covering tile and stone installation, masonry veneer installation, resinous and decorative floor finishes, concrete construction chemicals, and concrete restoration. They offer an array of low VOC and sustainable products. Their products contribute to LEED certification, exceed commercial and residential VOC building requirements, and are backed by the most comprehensive warranties in the industry. If you're not upselling warranties, you're doing it wrong, folks. For more information on Laticrete and the products they offer, visit laticrete.com. Troy, welcome to Floor Academy Podcast. Thanks for joining me. Who are you? What do you do? And why do you do it?
Well, my name's Troy Pefley. I have a carpet one in Fernley, Nevada. I started doing floors with my grandpa when I was about 7 years old, since I can remember. And I did that, until I hit the teenage years. And then obviously I was a teenager and went and did all the things that we're not supposed to. Before I got back into the flooring industry, I had about 30 jobs, from busboy to telemarketer, construction. I mean, I did a lot. And when I started doing floors, man, it was something that I was proud to walk away from. And I just, that sense of accomplishment, I couldn't get enough of. So I stuck with it. And I started an installation crew, or installation business per se. And from there grew into the retail side. So, and that's it in a nutshell.
How long have you had the store now?
Going on 10 years.
Okay. Yeah. That's decent amount of time.
Installation business I had for about 8 years.
Okay. And was the store were you getting sick of the installation side? It was just the next logical thing to move ahead in your career. What was the motivation behind buying the store?
Well, I just one day decided that, that I wanted to open a retail store. I guess I've always been the type to want to progress in life. Okay. That's an important factor. But I had this bright idea that I was, the install stuff I had licked. And now I want to grow into my own retail store. And I told myself that I was going to sell the carpet, install it, do the books, and do everything. Right. And that was my plan what I had in my head when I bought the store.
How'd that work out?
Well, a lot of trials and tribulations for sure. I've had everything under the sun happen, I think, that I know of. So
I believe it. It's not easy. I have a small retail shop now and I don't carry any product, but I have to drive to the distributor, pick it up, deliver it. There's that extra added step, but you're like, oh, but I'm going to make the money on the material. Well, all right, but how much money do you need to make on it? What if it's bad? What if something happens? You have to file a claim. Sure. It opens up another set of problems, but when you can overcome them, it's great. So I'm assuming we're talking about, employee safety. So, and we've had a prior conversation. I'm assuming you're not the only one doing it, even though that was kind of your thing. You're like, oh, I can handle it all. How many people you got over there now?
I think total in the office and out in the field, there's about 20 of us.
Okay.
It used to be up to like 25, but we had we are also in the countertop business,
Okay.
which requires some good safety as well, because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people get hurt doing that. But so when we opened up another division for fabrication, we lost about 8 employees over to the new business.
Okay, but you own both. You just they shifted from one side to another.
Correct.
Okay. Right on. So obviously you're running employees, which I think is a rarity for a retailer. The subcontracting model is probably not probably. It's most definitely the predominant method of running retail stores, I feel. So why did you decide to go the employee route instead of hiring it out to subcontractors?
Honestly, I didn't at the time. I didn't. I was ambiguous to it. I didn't know. I mean, I knew that a contractor could be hired, and stuff like that. But
Mm-hmm.
all the shops that I ever worked for in my area were employee ran, and it seems that since I've been installing that, the industry has gone more towards, like, some of the stores that I used to work for are hiring subs. Um, but for me personally, I was always concerned about the margin. I knew that, going back to what you were saying about how do we know what to charge, you're worried about your new overhead. I just always kind of felt in my head that if I had to give up more margin, that I wouldn't make as much money. The other side of it too is that, being that I'm an installer, um, I kind of I want the jobs to be done the way I want them done, not the way a contractor who's their own person. Um, and not to say that they're all like that, but you know, I just don't want to butt heads continually with somebody who is kind of got their own thing going on. There's a certain way that I've done business, not necessarily just with the install side, but how we talk to customers,
Mm-hmm.
how we look when we show up at a customer's house,
Yep.
not parking in the driveway, just things that it's hard to rope that stuff in with somebody that you're using every once in a while versus, like the guys that I have now, everyone's been with me over 5 years, and we have a great
Nice.
working relationship.
That's awesome. Before we get into it, I have a question, and I've kind of pondered it for a while. So, did I really just lose it? um, so you're running. Well, okay, here, okay. Employees, people generally think subcontractors, like, you pay them what you pay them, and like employees are a more profitable route, and that because you can control what they're paid and whatnot. So do you think you do better because you have employees and you would make less like running subcontractors, or do you think that it does kind of end up the same because you're matching the taxes, and if they kind of, if they don't hustle for a day right now, you got to pay them an extra day to go out. So do you think it ends up kind of being the same? Because I think there's this stigma of the subcontractors only want to make piece rate these days. Like, most people don't want to be employees because they think they're going to get screwed.
Yeah. Well, so in Nevada, we're allowed, like, California is different, piecework versus hourly. All of my employees are piecework. So
Okay.
I still have that control over how much they're making, so, like, we set our margins on labor, no matter what, is 50% or higher, because that'll
Mhm.
cover the liability side,
Yeah.
and then let the store make money there.
Mhm.
And then obviously, depending on the cost of material, what it costs, it varies from what the margin is on that. But our bottom line is that we just never go under, 30%. Like, we'll never do a job under 30%.
Okay.
So, I mean, does that answer your question?
No, I mean, it does. I think that's, your numbers, how you want to operate, and you found a way to do it successfully. And I think that's where a lot of problems lay, is a lot of people don't know how to run a profitable business. So they're not running the proper margins. And that's why you have guys and gals out there being crew leaders for like 25 an hour, and they're managing 2 or 3 people. They're answering all the questions for the homeowner, and they're like, why am I doing this for 25? Like, why am I running the show for $25 an hour? I might as well go do it myself. but then they go
Right.
out and they, you know, they start charging these different rates, and they have all this overhead now, and they're charging enough to pretty much make $25 an hour, and they don't, and then they have to hire
Yeah.
somebody to do it for $25 an hour. And like, we're not getting anywhere. And so that's where, you know, knowing your numbers and what you have to make and how much you can pay is correct. And I think being able to split it kind of 50-50, like you said, where, you know, half of it goes towards the employee, and they, you know, that's going to cover their taxes, their pay and all of that. And the other half goes towards paying office staff, the overhead on the shop and electricity and all that stuff. Like, that's a good mix. Like, that's kind of, that's where you need to be, and not going under 30. You're not going to make money under 30%. You're losing money for sure. But, you know, that 40 to 50% is really the sweet spot. I think that's where you
Absolutely
definitely need to be. So, okay. You've brought on employees. You're doing it to it. You're able to control and say, look, this is how I want installations done. I think that's really important, where, you know, like you said, as myself, as an installer, like my installs have been successful. My way works. I want that way to happen on my job sites, because I haven't had issues. Whereas somebody else coming in, if they don't feel good for a day and they want to like cut a corner, what's that going to cost me, them, the client? Look, no, you do it this way or you don't do it at all. So you do get a lot more control. But this employee safety thing is, I think it's often overlooked, right? Like, we can teach them to go and, hey man, the saw is really dangerous. Like, don't play with it. Make sure you keep your fingers away. Here's a push stick. Oh, you have long hair, tie it back when using the drill so it doesn't get sucked in. My high school wood shop, man, had the nastiest picture of some like dude from the 70s with his hair in the drill press.
Oh
Yeah.
man.
Not pretty. So that was like the, you know, don't mess around with the tools. We can kind of go over these things, but I think they get lost. We get lax, right? Like, I think probably every 6 to 9 months I have some kind of scare with my table saw or miter saw, because I'm just out doing something stupid, because I get used to using it every day, day in, day out. And then you do something dumb and you're like, oh yeah, it can cut my finger off. Like, I should pay more attention to what I'm doing. So how have you incorporated this into the business? Like, why is it important to you? Because I don't think a lot of companies hold it in importance. And then how have you incorporated it in?
Well, I think number one, the reason why I'm adamant about it is because I've had workers' comp claims. I've had false workers' comp claims. Um, I've had legitimate workers' comp claims. And when you feel the pain of, so like I had, let's see, I had 1, 2, 3, and they were within like 3 years. One guy got his hand crushed in the forklift. We were doing an overnight job, and they were, they were saw cutting concrete, taking the concrete out, putting it on a pallet, and my guys were using the forklift to get up above to the trash can, right? And then just pushing it off into the dumpster. You know, it was a big dumpster. And granted, I'm asleep, you know, like had I been there, I'd have been like, no, there's, you know, let's open the back of the dumpster.
Yeah.
And then we can just put it in that way. Anyway, he put his hand on the mast, and the guy lowered the forklift, and he got his hand crushed in the mast, you know? And so what happens when you get too many workers' comp claim in the state of Nevada, they put you on what they call an E-mod, is to where you have to have your workers' comp through the state, and your rates are like ridiculous. You know?
They go sky high, I bet.
Yeah. So, I mean, who wants to spend money unnecessarily, right? So that's what's kind of prompted it, you know, seeing and witnessing, and plus the poor guy's hand got crushed. I mean, I don't want that to happen to any of the people that are working for me.
Yeah.
You know? So the way some of the stuff that I do now, and again, there's a difference between commercial and residential. On a residential site, there's been times where, you know, you get it like, so generally I get my installers a helper. I'll help them find somebody, like I'll put a post out on Facebook locally to get, you know, people coming in, and we run through helpers. And a couple of times I've showed up on job site, and they're letting the new helper cut, and, you know, he's running his hand right by the blade, and their blade's dull, right? And stuff like that. So I think, that's what I do now to implement. I'm not so concerned about it as much now because all the people, like I said, have been with me for a long time. They know the drill. I still do show up, but yeah, you just got to be present, right? You need to show up on your job site, and if you have employees, and make sure that you're covering your butt and theirs. I mean, because if they cut their hand off, um, your schedule's screwed up, right?
Yeah,
Because now the work that you had him scheduled for, he's out. So there's so many things to think about when it comes to safety and doing our part as owners to the employees, right? Keep them safe and the helpers safe, and keep everything moving smooth.
for sure. I think it's a matter of, look, if we're going to have employees, we need to leave them better than we found them. And if they lose a hand or a digit or a foot or, whatever can happen, right? Plenty of crazy things can happen. We're not necessarily leaving them better than we found them. We need to be helping them succeed and be able to function in the future. I see too many old floor guys or gals complaining about, oh, my knees, my back, my hips, my shoulders, my whatever. And it's all preventable. We just have to be aware of what we're doing. And I think that's what you're talking about, is being able to go out and point out, like, hey, can you not do it this way? Can you do it how I showed you originally? And here's a refresher. And just trying to keep it top of mind and keep them focused on it so that they can be successful. Right. I think I've heard a number of, like, if you lose a digit, it's worth like 10K in a workers' comp payout. Okay. So great. I cut off 4 fingers. I get a check for 40K.
Yeah.
How much money? Well, how much money could you have made if you would have had those 4 digits?
Right.
It ain't worth 40K. So just you rushing a cut through the saw with a dull blade because you didn't want to ask me as your employer to buy you a new one. Look, I got money to go buy you the $80 saw blade. I ain't gonna, like, I can go get it sharpened for half that price if I need to, but, like, I'll get you a new saw blade, because if you're going to lose a digit, trust me, I want you to do it on a fresh saw blade as opposed to a, like, old dull one. It's not going to be pretty. So,
and that was something that I wanted to say too, is like, if your guys need safety protection or they need, a new blade, go buy it for them. Yep. I mean, that goes so far when you show up on the job site and say, here's a new blade for your saw, or, so go ahead. I cut you off there.
Well, no, I'm with you, right? Like, go get them some safety glasses, get them a pair of knee pads. Like, it's not the investment into your employees isn't that much money. I know a lot of guys make people provide the hand tools and the knee pads, and, like, I get it. Personally, I think if I'm employing you, I should provide you everything. Now, granted, I have a bucket with tools in it, and some people, like, I get it. You want to pick your hammer, you want to pick your tape measure, you want to pick your pry bar. Cool. You know what? Work for me for a while. If you don't like a tool, let me know, and then we can go shopping, right? You can go, I'll take you to the store, man. You can pick out the hammer that feels good in your hand. No problem. I'll build up another bucket. This is the starter bucket. You want to come and, like, be loyal to me? We can get you what you need. A pair of knee pads is what, the AP 16s from Pronies are what, like $90, I think, maybe $100.
Yeah.
So
for the ones with the shed split.
Yeah. So what, $100 a year, and then you can rebuild them once a year for like $50.
Yeah, best $100 you'll ever spend.
Correct. I think I can afford that. Like, if you can afford to invest $100 into an employee, you got other problems.
Right.
And you need to be figuring those out, because why wouldn't you want to make them as comfortable as possible, let alone, look, I'm willing to start someone at $20 an hour to, like, sweep a floor and lay out plastic and underlayment for me, right? Or grind the floor clean of the subfloor clean of anything. So $20 an hour, I don't expect them to have the $100 to be able to go and buy a set of knee pads. There's a pair in the truck, go get them. I can clean them, like, put some, this guy quits, this guy gets hired. Well, one, I don't let you wear shorts to the job site, so my knee pads don't get nearly as nasty as a lot of guys, because you got to wear pants, and, like, it's not as bad, but I can wash them, I can clean them. It's just fine. Yeah. But let's help them out. Like that's super important, I think, is just being able to set people up for success, and then they see you actually care about them. You're not nickel and diming them when they don't make a lot.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and don't get me wrong, early in business, I mean, I kind of did have that mindset, like, oh, well, you guys go buy, you're responsible for your tools, just like because I was when I was an installer,
Yep.
But as you get good employees and you get business running good, it's just super important. And to this day, there's people that still do kind of expect that. And I've just learned that it's best to provide them with what you need, kind of like what you're saying.
Yeah.
And one thing that I didn't get to say in the answer to the question of what I do is, there's obviously meetings, we have meetings. I believe it or not, I just in the recent started doing weekly meetings with my installers. I do weekly meetings with the staff, but we've I'm sorry, the office staff. But we just, and I didn't incorporate the meetings for safety purposes, but just to like talk to the installers and get feedback from them. There's always some type of disconnect between the office salespeople and the installers, and some bickering going on.
Yeah.
So, we started having just direct installer meetings so that they can be heard and find out their needs and wants, and safety being one of them that comes up. So I think that that's important too, is having installer meetings,
I believe it. You want to make sure that they're communicating with you. They're getting you the feedback you need for them to be successful, and you need to be able to keep them on the same page. I think a lot of people get annoyed by meetings, right? I remember working for a large package delivery company, and they would have us in, and we had to do like quarterly meetings as the supervisors, and they would take like an hour, and it was just useless information droning on and on, right? Everybody's like, oh, I hate these meetings. I don't want to go. This sucks. Da da da. So there was some important information in there, but it didn't need to be an hour. Like they could have divulged what we needed to know in about 10 minutes, and we could have moved on with our lives. And I think that's where people need to assess what they're doing with a meeting. What's the point to it? Stick to it, get that information out, get the feedback you need, and move on. We're not there to get sidetracked and chit chat and go on about this, that, and the other thing. If we're there to talk about like, look, Mrs. Jones complained about this thing, I want you all to be aware that you need to ask if you can dig a hole in the backyard to dump like remaining self-leveler patch into, then you need to ask permission. Like you can't just go digging a hole in a lady's yard and having it kind of messed up, right? So it's a good time to just communicate, get the feedback both ways. But then, like you said, it wasn't started to talk about safety, but it sounds like you are incorporating that into the meeting. So what is that, like a quick little segment of it? Is it just a weekly thing and you're just hitting a quick tip? What are you doing with it?
Well, I mean, we just generally, I just talk to them about looking at their cords, like extension cords. It's crazy I think with the floor installers, they, you bring up the word OSHA in any flooring installer that's been to a 10 or 30-hour OSHA class. It's painful, right? Because there's a lot of, there's some useful information in there, but there's also a lot of unuseful information for what we do. So when we do talk about it, I ask the guys if they need blades. I ask them how their extension cords are doing. And again, the difference between commercial and residential. So I was doing Ulta beauty salons. I had this contract going for a while where we were traveling all over. Like in 2 months, we would have 4 Ulta beauties to do. And I had to put together 2 like 8-man crews to go do these jobs. And I got everyone PPE. Protective equipment. PPE. We got all shirts, all hard hats, and I provided that for all those guys. And we had a safety meeting every day, because when you're doing a large commercial project like that, there's usually a bunch of trades in there, and some of the things that I would say would be like, look, if you're working by a guy with a ladder, you need to be aware. That's what the hard hat is for, because if that guy drops that pipe wrench on your head, it could kill you.
Yep.
You've got the conduit sticking out of the concrete. You've got pieces of rebar sticking out of the concrete. Things that I would go around on those crews and make sure that everybody was aware of it. And then at the end of the meeting, you have them sign, right? You have them sign that they were part of the meeting. Not like that's like to create an argument, but to just show that, if OSHA or something were to show up, that you were doing your part. I was having a conversation with my brother this morning about extension cords, and there's the 1926 standard and there's a 1910 standard with OSHA, right? And the 1910 standard is like the general standard for all workplaces, right? And then the 1926 is more about construction. It's more surrounded around construction itself, right? And in the 1926 standard, it says that, check your cord for nicks and frays and stuff like that. But the 1910 standard says to inspect it every single day, right? So if somebody were to get electrocuted on a job site and, they're like, oh, well, I checked it for nicks and frays, or, the OSHA will go back to the night. Like, you could still be liable for the 1910 standard, like where it says to check it every single day, right? So I think that those are useful pieces of information that even though OSHA is painful to get through sometimes for flooring contractors, there's stuff that is important because our guys can get electrocuted,
For sure. Well, and I think it's overlooked, right? A lot of us do. I think the commercial guys and gals are way more used to dealing with OSHA, hearing about OSHA, doing safety meetings, because that's a regular part of that world. I think it's highly overlooked in residential because we're like, what's the chances of OSHA rolling up on me? Like, they'd have to know where I was, and they're not called. Like, I don't have to submit where my jobs are to OSHA for them to come check me out, right? Unless there's a huge problem, OSHA's not coming and looking for me. So as long as I'm not having people get hurt, I'm probably okay. But that doesn't mean that just because OSHA's not going to be there, that you should not be using scaffolding to be doing a ceiling, right? Like putting a couple of boards between your rickety 20-year-old ladders that have bent frames on them, probably not the greatest idea. And so you need to invest in proper equipment. You need to make sure you're going to be safe and protected. Go ahead.
But I had an employee, a disgruntled employee that left the company in my old facility, call OSHA on me, and OSHA showed up to my showroom and said, hey, I've been notified that there's improper training on forklift use and that you have mice. So I'm here to do an inspection, right?
Okay. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it.
And he's like, and if you don't want to let me in, that's fine. I'm going to get a warrant and then I can come in and do it anyway,
God.
And so I'm just like, okay, I guess. Like, so we started walking around and, so this is important for retailers too, who are watching, I think, is like, if you have like wires exposed in your warehouse, or for me, what I got dinged for was I have a carpet cutting machine, right? And where that shaft meets the bearing, I got dinged for not having that bearing covered, right? Because someone's hair could get in there, or clothes, or whatever.
Yeah.
And that ended up costing me like $5,000. I got dinged by OSHA, and I learned also, about a program called SCATS. I don't know if they have that throughout the United States, but SCATS is a program to where you can call them out to do an inspection of your building, and they'll come through and they'll find any violations, and they will help you get them fixed. I mean, not like they're going to pay for it or send somebody out, but they'll say, this is what you need to do. And, but if you don't do it, because then they got to come back and inspect the problems. And if you don't, then they'll call OSHA on you.
Okay.
But it's a great resource, not necessarily for the installers, but for anybody who has a retail store, you don't want to get dinged that way. So if you get a pissed off employee that knows how to make your life challenging, they can,
Well, so do you have the posters laying around? Like, I know, you're supposed to have like a um, employment like pay poster, right? You're supposed to have like the federal pay wage poster, and you're supposed to have like a safety poster and a workman's comp poster. You got those posters around?
Yes, I do.
Good for you. See, so like as a store, like it's commonplace. Once again, things that are overlooked by the small guy, because I shouldn't say this. I don't have them. I should. You want to know where you put them? In the back of your trailer, because that's on the job site. That's where you have meetings at. Just post them up on that back door, tape them up, be done with it. Like, if somebody wanted to come and be a stickler about it, you can get dinged for it. And it's stupid, overlooked stuff where you're like, it won't happen to me. But here you go. Like, perfect example, disgruntled employee gets let go, and he's like, I'm going to get one on Troy. Ha ha ha. Hey, OSHA, go over here and check this stuff out. And like, you may have had, everybody could have been forklift certified. It could have all been up to date. There's no mice, but they found that bearing and it cost you $5,000.
Yeah, it did. It did. Well, the thing was, in that instance, everybody was trained on the forklift and had their certification. I got dinged for exposed wires and that carpet cutting machine. But yeah, I mean, there's just so many variables. Forklift certification definitely being one of them. And for me, it just took the pain of not being prepared for these things to make me open my eyes to what I call like the sleepers, right? Workers' comp injury, someone OSHA showing up. These are the things that can really put a damper in someone's business,
Well, and quickly, none of this stuff is cheap. Like you said, a couple of violations and you were paying out $5,000. Like and plus you had to fix it, which still cost more money. You had to have the electrician come in probably for the wires, and you had to have somebody come out and do something to the carpet machine. So it probably was $5,000 in fines plus whatever to fix the stuff, right? Plus now your insurance went up because you had the injuries. And that's what I want to kind of touch on is, so like, what was that process like? Is you had so many so quick, you got put on the state program, which is going to be just probably astronomical. But even after an injury, like, your rates go up, and I'm sure it's not pleasant. And how long does that stuff hang around? Is it like they come off after 3 years and your rates might go down, or like, how does that all kind of work?
3 years.
Okay.
Yeah, like once you get on an E-mod, you're stuck on it for 3 years, and yeah, in that 3 years of like, gosh dang it, why are we paying so much for insurance? You start paying attention to safety, and you start, kind of hounding on your guys about it. And so, yeah, I mean, that's kind of it. You're just paying a lot of money. You're in fear of another injury, because it happens, accidents happen. And it's just a process to where you're getting, I think insurance is America's biggest scam anyway, because why am I paying for this insurance if something happens and all of a sudden you're going to charge me 30% more? Are you kidding? Right? Like, it's a scam, but it's a cost of doing business,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, injuries are not good.
No, they're not. Insurance being just in case, and I'd rather have it than not. It's generally, if you don't have issues, it's cheap, right? Like, it doesn't get expensive, but it's when you do have that accident that then they're like, oh, well, you're a bigger liability. Well, am I? Because it's the people that haven't had an issue yet that are the bigger liability. Like me, what are the chances of me having another issue? Like, I've already rolled the dice and my odds have come up. So,
yeah.
But things happen. I lost I had some tools get stolen, and then I had an accident with a trailer in like 6 months. And so I had to file 2 claims against not a workman's comp policy. That doesn't make sense. An inland marine policy that I had on my tools. And so then they promptly dropped me at renew time. Like, you 2 claims is too much and you're gone. And I was like, oh, well, that sucks. So
that's messed up, right?
I mean, yes and no. I get it. Like, I think I paid it was like $120 for $5,000 in coverage for the year. And I filed 2 claims against it. Like, I get them dropping me. And one of them was for like, I think I cashed in on like $7,000 because the trailer was packed full of tools. So
Yeah.
I did good. They didn't do so well. I did great. So let me interrupt us here for a second, and then I want to get back into it. I want to talk about just kind of the awareness, right? Like that. Let's continue talking about the insurance and having it and why and how to work with it. And the insurance company probably recommended processes for you after the injuries, but let's get into that in just a minute. Hey, listeners, whether you're an installer, retailer, distributor, or serve in another capacity within our industry, attending trade shows is a solid resource to expand your knowledge and networking base. You can also learn about the newest and industry-leading products coming to market. The International Surface event is returning to Las Vegas January 31st through February 2nd, 2023, so mark your calendars now. Floor Academy listeners will have exclusive registration offers coming soon, so stay up to date with the International Surfaces event page on Facebook. Johns Manville manufactures a range of innovative building materials, including products for the flooring industry. From GoBoard to Evolith, JM products are not often visible, but they provide technical, environmental, and economic advantages to the essential items you're installing every day. GoBoard is an ultra-lightweight and waterproof tile backer board, while Evolith products are fiberglass or polyester non-woven components used in the making of carpet tiles, LVT, and resilient flooring. All right, Troy. So what was this insurance game kind of like, right? It's not fun. One, I know that. Like, just dealing with insurance companies is absolutely miserable. Processes are generally slow. So yeah, they increased your rates, but did they offer you any kind of help to assist in how to prevent things going forward?
No, they just wanted my money.
Damn.
You know?
Okay. That sucks. Did you ask them if they had anything, like any resources for you?
No, I didn't actually. And, I was not as mature in business at those times. But, I, since then, like, there's a company called Pro Group Management.
Okay.
And they're a full insurance company, and they will show up on your job sites, and check to make sure that you're being safe. So that's one that we haven't joined with yet. But I think that, so like in a couple of weeks, I have CPR training for everybody.
Oh, cool.
Right. That's a good one. So that cost me $1,000, and I had to schedule it on 2 different days. So I think that that's a great question that I don't know enough about, and I think I'll look into. But I also do, I am doing measures on my own. I think that training is a good topic, right? Like,
yeah,
we can talk about safety and we can tell our guys what we expect, but some people may need training for it. And the insurance company could be a good resource for that. And I'm sure there's other places that we can go to get our guys trained.
Well, I would think they would want to help you be successful, right? They don't want to pay out claims. They'd rather just collect your couple $1,000s a year and not pay anything out. That's in their best interest if they're not paying things out. In fact, during the pandemic, because there was way less accidents, my car insurance company cut me a check back like, hey, we saved money because we didn't have to pay anything out because no one was going anywhere. So not that all insurance companies will do that, but it's a possibility. So I think maybe hit up your insurance company and see if they have any resources. Do you have an employee safety handbook? Do you have any kind of training materials for the construction industry? You're paying these people for a service, and it's not just, I guarantee you, it's not just for the coverage they actually offer you. There's got to be some kind of education component to it. And I have no idea. And if they don't, maybe try another company and see if they do. And if you got to pay $100 more a year to be able to have access to amazing resources, it might be worth it, folks. So
and
check that out.
On the safety manual end of things, like we do have one of those for sure, and each page is initialed by the employee and all that. But again, as soon as that's signed, like when the guys are filling those out to get their employment paperwork done, they're not reading it right.
Correct.
At least, So those things kind of just get tucked away in the file cabinet. And again, I just think that keeping it present, you
Mm-hmm.
know, daily, weekly, however a store needs to do that to their capacity, is what's important, right? I mean, again, we put all these safety manual stuff in place to protect us, but there's more that we could do to protect our employees, and unfortunately, it's our job as owners to to facilitate and manage that. You know,
Yes.
that's how I feel about it.
Well, I totally agree. I know I get handed I haven't applied for a job in a long time, but I get handed a stack of paperwork from somebody. I'm just like, look, where do I initial and sign? Right? Like, give me my copy. I'll read it later. Problem is, what did I actually sign off on?
Right.
I know in one case, I was lucky that I did read something because it was saying that the company would own the rights to like a talk I was giving. And I was like, no, 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 no. I own that. Like, I'm going to come up with all the content and I'm going to own it. And if I want to redistribute it somewhere else, like I'm going to be able to do that. And so I was like, no, I X'd it out. I was like, this is our contract now. And they never rejected it. So apparently it flew through, but the meetings is exactly why, right? These guys, they're like, I just want my job. I want to get it done. Yeah. Yeah. I've read all the safety stuff, blah, blah, blah. Here it's signed, right? And it goes in the file. And then when they get hurt and you get to say like, hey man, it's not my fault. You got hurt. I'm not paying out more than workman's comp and I don't have to do anything for you because you signed here, here, and here. They're like, well, but what? No, no, no. You were supposed to read that and you decided not to. And I think that's these meetings you're talking about and being able to keep it top of mind and fresh and whatnot. That manual needs to be gone over and not necessarily like in depth and bore them, right? But if you're having these meetings, let's pick a page and hit on the highlights of the page. And let's 3-4 things in the meeting and we're moving on. And the next week we can do some more and more and more. That way they've heard all the stuff they need, because otherwise I think you're going to get some really pissed off employees when they come back and they're like, I didn't know. Well, you're not a child.
No, exactly. And unfortunately, sometimes it feels that way, because there's just so many different personalities that we have to deal with as the more employees we get.
Well, I was having a conversation with another friend and they were like, I feel like I have to cater to the stupidest person on the planet. And sadly, it's kind of true. Like, we're taking so many different, like you said, personalities, right? We're putting them together. Like, I've got to cater to the lowest person on the totem pole. And some people might be offended by that because they're like, I can't believe you have to explain it like this. I can't believe you have to do something like this. I think they used the wrong ball hooking up a trailer. And so now the balls and the trailers, like if it needs a 2-inch, it's like yellow. And if it needs the 2 5/16 or whatever it is, it's like red, right? But the ball and the back of the tongue on the trailer are spray painted the same color. Like, put these two together, right? So really like kindergarten level stuff.
You got to make it Bert and Ernie.
Correct. But at the same time, I get it, because mistakes do happen. And even the smartest guy can screw that up because he's in a hurry. He's like, I got to go, go, go. But if that trailer pops off and it hits another car coming the other way.
Yeah.
Dude, no way, man. I don't want to deal with that.
Mm-mm. No, it's scary, man. And unfortunately is like, I've gone through times like to where, I feel burdened by having to dumb things down so much for certain people, or say the same thing over and over and over again. But as I've matured more in business, I've learned that it's more of a privilege, right? Like it's super hard. Like this ship wouldn't run without these guys. Now, obviously, if you have a repeat offender and this guy's a liability, then it might be time to look at, a replacement. But, the fact of the matter is I feel like what I've learned is it's my job to think for people, And I struggled with that. It's like, because my thinking doesn't think that way. It's like, okay, you tell me this, I'm going to do this, and you can rely on me to do it the
Yeah.
way that you're asking me to do it, you know? So I expect that same mentality out of the people that I work with. And it's taken me putting my foot in my mouth, sleepless nights, um, to realize that this is my job. I have I have all bases covered, so it's my job to think for these guys and manage them, and realize that it's a privilege, not a burden. You know.
That's really powerful. I think that's a great way to look at it, because like you said, right, we can get frustrated trying to dumb everything down and being like, I can't believe I have to cater to this person. But what a lot of us, like you said, is we have insider information that we know, and we assume other people have it too, and they don't. And so you tell somebody to go do something like, oh, they know how to do it. They may not know how to do it, and they may screw it up really bad or do something to get themselves hurt. And so by breaking it down and looking at it as like a privilege to be able to help somebody develop a skill and be safe about it and to be successful at it, whether it's annoying or not, to break it down, honestly, once you've done it, it's done. And so,
Yeah.
sure, it's overwhelming at first. So is anything, right? You can say, I want to make $1 million a year. And as a one man show, like that may seem really overwhelming at first, but it's only $250,000 a quarter, or it's a little over $20,000 every week. It becomes
Right.
much more manageable when you start breaking it into smaller chunks. So you may be new into business, and you at this point, like, it may not be as overwhelming because you add one new piece of equipment, you come up with one new set of instructions. But 10 years ago, it was, I have how much stuff now? And there was a
Yeah.
lot of instructions to make, right? But like you get one set of instructions done, and you get another set of instructions done. You get one employee manual done. You get one job description done. Like, you start knocking them off the list. And now you have a much better running machine, as opposed to
Yeah.
Troy trying to do 20 jobs and put out fires everywhere.
Exactly. Exactly. And again, it's trials and tribulations, man. Making bad decisions,
Mm-hmm.
making good ones, um, and learning what works the best. And then setting those SOPs, right? Standing operating procedure for things. And I think that for people that are new in business, you could definitely, there might be people smarter than me that already know how to do all this, but there's definitely resources out there like scats, or I'm sure online, safety manuals and things that,
Mm-hmm.
The new people in business can do to not have to go through the things that you and I have. I mean, accidents do happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, that there are just things that can be done for preventative maintenance, right?
Correct. I got to learn a lot of things the hard way. That's just kind of my personality. And I think maybe a lot of tradespeople are that way.
Yeah.
But if you can learn from somebody else's mistake, and Troy's telling you that his insurance went through the roof and he, had these OSHA violations, like, they were all preventable by other measures that he's learned about, but it cost him a lot of money to do it. So if you don't want to ever have that, like, I can't promise you that it won't cost you something, but a little bit of investment into bettering yourself, your company, your employees can go a really long way in saving you money long term, instead of saying, nah, we're good, we'll ride it out, we'll see if it happens. Because when you see if it
Yeah.
happens, it costs 5 times more guaranteed.
Yeah. And that actually kind of trickles down into like the craftsmanship side of things. I'm always telling my guys, look, if you spend 5 minutes now, right,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to spend 2 hours driving back to go fix a piece of quarter round. I mean, this is completely preventable. Not only is it going to cost you your time to go do it, it's your time now. It's my time now. It's the salesperson's time. It's the controller's time, because the order's still sitting on her desk and she can't do her job. So
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing what 5 minutes can do, rather it's the safety,
Mm-hmm.
it's important.
Well, and I think with a lot of safety things, like you're like, oh, well, I'll just hop up here. I won't use the step stool, or, I'm going to rush and like force this cut through the saw. Yeah, great. Now you got hurt. Now the job's not getting done at all.
Yeah.
So did that really save you time, or did it it's costing you everywhere? I think
Yeah.
that's a mindset that more people need to do. And you bring up a great point, is like, don't stop. If it takes you an extra 5 minutes, I'm okay with it, especially paying an employee. Look, man,
Mm.
I'll pay you an extra 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I'll pay you an hour. If I got to pay you a couple hours of overtime a week, cool. As long as the work is high quality and done right and we don't have to go back, it's probably in the budget. So just go
Absolutely.
do it. Like, I'm not going to sweat little details like that. And guys that do, like, once again, look, just go charge more. And that's not exactly the right message. And we just talked about that in another episode of, like, you can't just charge more. You have to be able to offer more. But
Right.
if you're not having to cover coming back all the time, then being able to charge a little bit more to be more profitable, like, you're losing money because you're sending people out. So you may not even have to charge more. You may just need to convince them to spend the time to do it correctly the first time, and then you'll see your profits go up because you're not having to mobilize so many people to fix a problem of, well, I was rushing, I forgot to nail up this one piece of quarter round and it's loose and came off, or the T-mold popped up, or
Yep.
whatever stupid problem happened. Like, a couple minutes can save you a
Couple
lot of
minutes.
time.
Save everybody time, right?
Yes. Well, especially in a bigger operation, like you said, for me, right? I get a phone call. I just got to hop in the truck with the trailer and go out and fix it. But I have to take the phone call. I have to drive wherever I have to go. I have to pull out the tools needed. And if it's literally a piece of quarter round, like, I operate with a compressor. So I got to pull out the compressor, get the cord, get the correct nail gun out, fill it up, right? Like, I'm sitting there waiting. So now it's 30 minutes to get the tools out, set up, put it on, deal with the conversation with the client. And then, it was half an hour there and it's going to be half an hour home. Now it's an hour and a half. You've got someone you're paying to take a phone call that probably could have been working on something else. And then there's 5 people involved instead of one, which just
Exactly.
compounds how many people are handling this. And for a stupid phone call over, well, I was rushing and I forgot to nail up a piece of cord around. Like,
Right.
come on. Once
Well,
again,
and like, not to mention going back to like the safety and the things, like, I mean, could be a reach, but you having to drive back an hour, right?
oh yeah.
Is more potential for you to get in another car accident.
Well, 100%. It's super dangerous. I went out and I was supposed to do a repair on some vinyl plank. Turns out that they installed the island at a 45 on top of the straight lay plank, and the boards that they were scratched were like running underneath the island. I was like, nah, I ain't touching it. I was like, sorry, like, I'm not trying to pull these out and, like, just because you got to cut off the locks and glue them back in place. Like, I was like, nah, this ain't really going to work. Like, I don't want to take the liability. It's like, if you want to have someone come in and remove the countertop and the island, like, cool. So I got out of there and I drove my trailer home and I'm backing it into my parking spot. Tire pops. Luckily I was home, but it was that one trip was what it took, So it could have been on the road that it happened, and who knows what happens at that point. Does it get squirrely and hit the car next to me? Does it continue to go straight like it should? Who knows? Like, I was very thankful it happened in the parking spot.
For sure. I mean, again, it's like accidents happen, and a tire could pop, or somebody could swerve in front of you, and or whatever. There's so many variables there, and it's obviously not good to live in fear. But yeah, man, it's just all we can do is our best every day to provide a safe work environment for our employees, and be a good resource for them for what they need to be safer, and give them proper training. I think that breaking out the safety manuals is a great idea. And you don't need to nail the whole thing over in one meeting, but pick a topic or two every meeting. I think that's brilliant.
Definitely. Well, so that living in fear thing is great. were you, once you had these injuries, right, and you got put on the EMOD program in Nevada, were you living in fear for your company? Was this something that immediately became like super
Yeah,
important to you, and you were going around, running around, stop, don't, right? Like,
yeah.
did,
Yeah.
did that mess up the culture, and now it's become a little more relaxed, but because it's built in? But did it, like, what was that like moving through it? Right? Did living in fear almost make it worse when you first had all this happen?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think fear is a bad thing in general. It was like waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning thinking about it with your heart racing and having anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, fuck. Yeah. In fact, you're talking about doing the Ultas. We were up in Idaho doing one, and I flew in. I rented a car to help those guys wrap up that job. And I had to send two guys to Washington to go do like a 5-minute repair. Right. And I told them, I said, look,
Jeez.
get a room. When you're done, get a room. And you need to, you guys don't need to be driving from Idaho to Washington and then leaving because we had to do it at night when the Ulta closed at like
Mm-hmm.
10 o'clock. So I was like, I'll pay for the room, get a room, and then start the next morning. Well, no, they drove. They decided they were going to drive and take turns. Well, guess what? They drove the car off the road because the one kid fell asleep.
Oh,
You know what I
jeez.
mean?
Yeah.
And again, that was earlier in my business career a you know as Royal Floors, not Royal Carpet One, and I did not get them insured on the vehicle. And their name wasn't on the vehicle, and luckily nobody got hurt. They just were frightened to death, and it
Mm-hmm.
ruined the next 24 hours for them getting home. But so in that time that I was on EMOD, that had happened. And again, that's just one of those learning experiences that you experience in business that ended up costing. I had to pay $6,000 for the car. They wanted 13,000, but I was like, did my, negotiating and got it down to 6. But it's mistakes like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
That are hasty decisions, oh, they'll be fine. They don't need to be on the car, Jared. They won't wreck it.
Yeah.
Well, guess what?
Correct.
So I got the call at 2 o'clock in the morning that they wrecked the car, and I think my response was like, "Are you guys okay? What do you want me to do? Put the
Mm-hmm.
car on the phone." I think I said something smart because I was.
I can't blame you, but I get it. Like,
And
at least you asked if they were okay first.
yeah. But so living in fear about it is it's a good motivator to cover your bases, but it's
Mm-hmm.
definitely not a way to live.
You gotta work your way out of it for sure. But I think
You do.
it gets
And
you that motivation to get working on it.
well, and I believe that there's other ways that I've learned to pass that time to where I was super fearful about, getting another insurance claim is, how to learn how to be mindful of when you wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning. Because the bottom line is there's nothing we can do at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like, and that's where having a business can be unhealthy for us sometimes because it's not good for us to not get good sleep and to wake up with anxiety or fear. And, I think the key is learning how to become more mindful of the stuff when that happens. And then, realizing that it'll be there at 8 o'clock in the morning, right.
Yeah, no, I've had it happen. Like, I will still, every once in a while, a big project that I'm going to start, right, will have me up on a Sunday night when I know I'm starting it Monday and I can't sleep. I'm tossing and turning. I'm going over in my head where I'm going to start, how I'm going to start, why I'm going to start that, why, how it's going to go. And then you show up, you get 10 minutes into it, and that plan's out the window. So, like, did I really need to be anxious about it? No, I didn't, because I knew what I had to do. I already knew what I was going to do. Why is this a concern? And then I know that no project ever goes according to plan.
Right.
It's like,
Right.
what are you going to
It's
do?
entrepreneur brain, man.
Yes, correct. And it's, I think it's a learned skill to kind of let things go and not have them affect you as much, but
Sure.
it's important. Like you need to let go, and you can't, if you're constantly living in fear and you're not growing and working your way out of the situation, it's going to affect your business. You will not run as well as you should because you're going to be physically and emotionally drained because of it. And you're just not going to run on all cylinders. It doesn't matter how much of a entrepreneurial god you are. If there's more to it than that, because that emotional and physical side do matter. And I've
Yeah.
talked about it on the
It's an
show
evil
before.
and it's an evil and corrosive thread that we can't see in the fabric. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it manifests itself in many ways, like you're saying. Like if you're living in fear, you're coming in trying to manage your people, but you're just not all there. People could tell that there's something off, right?
Yep.
And it's definitely something to manage when it's there, for sure.
Yes. No, I love it. I think this has been a great discussion on how to kind of manage the safety aspect of things. And we've touched on some other things along the way that have been really powerful and great advice. And I think it just comes down to being aware of what's going on around you and how you operate with your employees or subcontractors. And for folks that do have subcontractors, we didn't really hit on it. You can't make them go do stretches. You can't tell them to be, you can, hey man, just make sure you're paying attention with your equipment, right? You can kind of remind them to be safe, but you can't really control them. You can't hold them to like, here's my safety policy. But
Right.
maybe some posters at the shop, maybe some emails to them about like, hey, this is our tips, or these are our, we want you to be aware of this going into this season because we're concerned about you. Like there's ways that you could send out emails to them that you're not dictating how they have to do things, but you're hinting heavily that,
Yes.
hey, you should consider these things, right? Do you do stretches? Like you can work safety into helping your subcontractors. So look
I
at it. Don't
one
ignore it.
and one thing that I do to all office staff and installers is I offer to pay for their gym membership, right?
Oh, okay.
Because I talking about stretches and stuff because I wouldn't say I'm a health nut, but I know that I operate better, healthy body, healthy mind, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And when some of the guys are kind of like talking about aches and pains and stuff, none of them, they're all working so hard. I don't think hardly any of them go to the gym. So I try to get them to go to the gym. Hey, I'll pay for your gym membership
Yeah.
if you want. I'll take you. You want to go with me? I had one guy a salesperson that found out that I can't remember the terminology, but his heart was working at like 20%,
Oh, wow.
and it's like, man, you know, you're a great employee and I want to keep you, but I also want you to be okay, you know? So I obviously, I'm not saying go and buy everybody gym memberships, but when the opportunity presents itself, that that's something that I do,
Mm-hmm.
and another thing that you kind of touched on about like not forcing things on there is like picking your battles, right? You got to know which battles to pick and when it's time to kind of enforce something and when it's not, because with the market the way it is right now, we definitely don't need to like push ourselves on an installer about something and then have them quit, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's unless it's something completely necessary that they're not following and they're blatantly looking to get hurt or hurt somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
So
For
picking your
sure.
battle.
Pick and choose your battles. You gotta look, if it's a standard, if it's a policy for your company, I can get it. Go gently remind people, but if you're gonna sit there and nitpick something over and over and over again and it's not really harming anybody, maybe let it go. But I also know that sometimes you might see something and you're like, oh, that doesn't look right. Well, all right, we'll keep an eye on it, right? And you don't say anything, and then 3 days later, that's the person that puts their hand through the saw because you were like,
Exactly.
well, I knew, but it looked okay. Like they're not that dumb. Well, a little gentle reminder goes a long way in just, helping everybody to stay on top of it. So I definitely
Yeah.
think it's important. Don't nitpick, don't harp on things, but point them out, let them know, it's at the end of the day, it's if you're the owner, or if you're instilling a proper culture, everyone should feel like they're an owner of the company. I would want my employees to either tell somebody that they're driving the forklift unsafely or they're doing something really dumb,
Mm.
and or at least come to me so I can go address it. And I don't
Sure.
like, that's not, you know, people are like, oh, don't be a tattletale, don't go narc on people.
Right.
Look, at the end of the day, like, we should all feel ownership for the company, because if somebody gets hurt, it does affect us all. If the rates go up for the owner, maybe we don't get raises this year. Or,
Yeah.
maybe that affects somebody's kid, right? Like they chop off a few fingers, they can't work now, and now they have to find a new way to make money, and this kid doesn't have as good of a life. Or so. Look, I don't know what can happen. All kinds of crazy things can happen, but it's that gentle push, right? To just,
Yeah.
hey, let's remain aware, I think is really important.
I
Troy,
have one more experience I wanted to share
yeah,
real quick.
please.
Um, that this was in the last couple of years that I learned. So, I've had a couple of like guys that like, oh, my back's hurting, and I don't want to go file an insurance claim. So, I just tell them to go to their urgent care and get checked out, and I pay for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like obviously if there's a like this guy needs to go to the hospital type of thing, yeah, go file your insurance claim or through workers' comp. But I in certain cases I would be like, hey, just go to Renown. Well, I had this case with this guy, and he was a little odd, different installer, but he cut his finger on the table saw, just the tip of it, and he went to the doctor and got it sewed up. Right, it was just like 4 stitches or whatever, and everything was fine, and like a flesh wound per se. And so I was like, well, hey man, just bring me the bill, if you want, just if you want to file a workers' comp claim, you can, but if you want, just bring me the bill,
Yeah.
and I'll pay for it. He's back to work the next day, ready to go to work. Well, he decided that he wanted to file a workers' comp claim, and because if something happens down the road for his 4 stitches, right? And turns out you can't do that. You can't, if somebody says they're hurt on the job, you can't just like pay the bill for them,
Yeah.
like legally you can. So
Okay.
I just wanted to throw that out
Yeah,
there.
no, I mean, good to know. Like it's, I wish it worked that way, but got to
Right.
follow proper procedures and protocols and all of that. It's important to know how to do it right. There's people think driving their truck around for the business while it's insured with their personal insurance is okay. I'm going to tell you it's not. If something happens, here's the biggest thing is you formed a LLC, so you have a limited liability corporation, so there's a veil around your business assets for a reason. Well, you're driving a truck insured under your personal entity, and you now got in an accident doing things for work, so that veil of protection from the business to you is broken. So now they're going to sue you and the business, and they can get everything you have. Like,
Right.
the little details matter, folks. And just because you're really, really good at the art side of it and you're an artisan and you can install great doesn't make you a business owner. But that's why this show's here. This is why I love doing it, is because it's all the little details that are overlooked that we need to have these conversations about, so that we can all go do better and succeed and not have the struggles that others have had. And like, I thank you for being open and being willing to share your struggles and say like, yeah, man, I made mistakes, but I've learned
Yeah.
from them and I'm doing better now. So is there
For sure.
anything we didn't hit on, Troy, that we should have talked about?
I'm sure there is, but I think we had a really good conversation, man.
All right. Awesome. So that'll do it for us at this week's folks. That'll do it for us this week, folks. Man, okay, I'm running out of words, I guess. I appreciate you coming on, Troy, sharing your story, being willing to,
Yeah,
open up and talk about it and what you've learned. If anyone wants to go to flooracademypod.com, you can check out the shop, pick up a t-shirt or something. You can listen to old episodes, and there's links to every place we're available. Go check out the YouTube. All the episodes are available there, but you can look at my ugly mug. Troy's, he's a good looking guy with a beard. You can go see him. He might be single. Are you single, buddy?
I didn't hear you. What did you say?
I said, are you single?
I am.
Well, okay. See, go look, ladies. He runs a store. It's doing well. He's got a beard. He's looking good. Go check him out on the YouTube channel. Subscribe.
Now I'm blushing.
Maybe that's the way I got to sell the YouTube channel now. Like, yeah, I'll turn it into like a Tinder or something. Go check out the guests and see if you think they're attractive. No, we got a YouTube channel. Go check it out over there. Subscribe for me. I'd very much appreciate it. If you want to help support the show, patreon.com/Floor Academy, even $5 a month goes a really long way in helping to continue to improve the industry and help everyone advance from where they are currently at. And I believe that'll do it. Thanks to the sponsors. Troy, once again, thank you to you.